Thank you for joining us for the 60th episode of Ask the Governor. Governor John Bel Edwards has done this 5 consecutive years now as he talks to the people of Louisiana once a month in this venue. And if you'd like to give us a call, we'd love to hear from you. 877-217-5757. There is much to talk about, as we know. It's an interesting world in which we are in, and it was 1 year ago yesterday that the governor imposed the first stay-at-home order amid the COVID-19 outbreak. And things are looking up, but there are many miles to travel to get to where we need to be, and the governor will, of course, address that and much more. And Jerry Mayer from Hometown Productions is here, as he is every week, so many people will see this program not live, but at times throughout the day and night all over cable channels in the great state of Louisiana. And we thank our many affiliates across our state and in 2 other states. Again, 877-217-5757. And Governor, good afternoon. And Jerry has an easy one. He says we should start by talking about something pleasant. And it's pleasant in a way, sad in another. After 15 spectacular seasons, Drew Brees has called it a day. And you, as a former quarterback who's about the same size as Drew, you must have an appreciation for how good he was.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I suspect that, you know, our sizes are about the only 2 things that might be equivalent there. He just had a tremendous career, as you know. I think he's all-time leader in passing yards and second in touchdowns, and just a tremendous player. And being a lifelong Saints fan, and I think the Saints franchise is as old as I am. They were started on All Saints Day in, 66? Or
that is correct.
Yeah, so I was born just a couple weeks ahead of that. You know, all of my life I've grown up a Saints fan, but the success we've enjoyed over the last number of years with Drew Brees at the helm have just been tremendous and very different from what we all experienced before that. And on top of the success, you know, I think by all accounts, Drew Brees is a good family man, a good citizen, and always tried to make a lasting lasting contribution to the community that he was working in, both New Orleans and around the state. So I wish him nothing but the best. And I do want to say that this is 5 straight years now, 60 shows that we've done on a monthly basis. I want to thank you, Jim, for, I mean, you and all of your teammates there, all the affiliates who stuck with the program. It's something that I think is very, very important for me, at least. But you all have provided the avenue, you know, to do this, and I just wanted to thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and it's always a pleasure to catch up with the governor, who's one of the few, if any, governors remaining who does this sort of thing. Because you never know what the other person on the end of the line is going to say. Most of the most of the calls are charitable, but occasionally you get a pointed question, and the governor always gives it his best shot. Before we get through talking about Drew Brees, in sports and politics, timing is everything. And Drew came to New Orleans the year after Katrina. And he really was a big part of that city's comeback, which, of course, culminated with the Super Bowl championship in February of 2010. But that was a franchise, as you know, you followed them, that was considered the worst in all of pro sports until he came with Sean Payton to New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was in the 9th grade in high school, I think we won 1 game that year. I think we beat the Jets. It may have been the last game of the year.
1-15 in 1980, yeah.
1-15, and I can vividly remember sparse attendance to the game and people wearing bags over their heads. But thankfully, those days are well in the past, and that's not the way we think about the Saints now. And for a professional football team, you know, the Saints have been tremendously successful, especially in light of the fact that the market in which they operate is one of the smaller media markets. And so I think Mr. Benson and now Mrs. Benson have done a remarkable job in the business of professional football. But it's very clear that they're not just out to make a profit. They really want to win. And that I think makes the difference because it sets the tone from the top. And I was very happy to see that one of the things that Drew did on his first day in retirement was to accompany Mrs. Benson to the gravesite of Tom Benson. So that speaks, too, about what kind of person he is.
We retired on March 15th, 15 years to the date that he signed with New Orleans, and he was born on the 15th day of January. He's 42 years old, and I suspect we will hear from him in the media, and who knows, maybe even in politics. But as we segue to COVID-19, a few days ago, Scott Woodward, the LSU athletic director, said he's hopeful that we can have 100,000 people in Tiger Stadium come September, and I'm sure the Saints are hopeful that they can fill the dome as well. Is that a practical possibility right now?
Oh, I think it's certainly possible. I'm going to stop short of saying that I fully expect it to happen, but I'm hopeful that it can. Yeah, but to a very large degree, Jim, the people of Louisiana have it within their collective control as to the degree to which and when we can actually achieve more normalcy. We are trying very hard to speed the vaccinations as we continue to try to slow the transmission of the virus, which is more and more influenced by this UK variant, the B117 variant. And given the vaccine doses we've been told to expect going forward, but especially around the 1st of April with a big increase, we really have the opportunity over the next 6 weeks or so, I think, to put ourselves in a much, much better position. But we've got to beat it. And I've used this analogy before. It's another sports analogy. But I played baseball from a very young age. And when you hit the ball, you've got to run all the way through the base. And we're not at first base yet. We've got to run all the way through. We've got to get people vaccinated as quickly as we can, slow the transmission, and then hopefully we will be in a position to achieve much more normalcy. And I've always said that I thought when school lets in this fall, around Labor Day, that we're going to be in a much, much better place. And I hope that that's reflected in the stands at Tiger Stadium and around the rest of the state as well.
Simone in New Orleans. Simone, you're on Ask the Governor. Good morning, Simone, or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm glad I get to lead the callers this afternoon because I want to start off on a positive note, and I want to thank the governor for prioritizing coastal restoration here in Louisiana, especially in your second-term priorities. I know it hasn't been easy, and we've had many challenges with COVID, unprecedented hurricane season, but you have always advocated for restoring and protecting our coast, and it's much appreciated. And particularly, you have followed the science when it's come to some major projects, including the Mid-Baratie Sediment Diversion. I grew up here in Louisiana, and it's really important to me that my kids get to enjoy the same things that I did growing up. And I think that's what this is about matching a project to face the challenges that we have here in Louisiana. So your leaders at CPRA have been so great about talking about how to participate in the process and how you can be productive and that they're still open to ideas and suggestions. So I really just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for being a leader for Louisiana and leading the people of our working coast.
Governor, your response to Simone in New Orleans. I hope we still have the governor there.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much. So I appreciate the call, Simone, and Chip and his team do a great job at CPRA. And there's been some positive developments on the Mid-Baratie Sediment Diversion, and that is that the Corps earlier this month, on the 5th, I believe it was, released the draft environmental impact statement that showed the benefits and impacts changes to the project surrounding environment. And by the way, it largely affirmed what we believed that study would show, and that's the benefits and that this would be a successful project. And also the Louisiana Trustee Implementation Group, it's known as LATIG, released a draft restoration plan which details how they will approve the expenditure of Deepwater Horizon funds in order to pay for the project. And as you mentioned, Simone, the public comment period is underway. There's a 60-day comment period. We encourage everyone, whether you support it, whether you don't, whether you have concerns, to make your views known, and you should do that now, including submitting official public comments to the Corps. But, you know, Jim, we've all known for a long time that levying of the river prevented the annual overflow of the banks and the deposit of sediment, which is how you nourish and rebuild your coast on an ongoing basis. So it's not rocket science to think that if you build sediment diversions properly and you reintroduce that sediment to the coast, that you can actually build marsh, and which is critically important to restore the coast and provide a buffer against strong storms, especially against hurricanes, which, if the last few years are any indication, they're only gaining in intensity and frequency. So this is important for everybody in Louisiana.
And it's a $1.5 billion project, I believe. And the best part is that it's funded largely by the BP settlement, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's correct, and that's what LATIG involvement is, and yeah, it's important for our state, and it doesn't mean that it won't cause some inconveniences for some or have an adverse impact on certain individuals, but largely it's going to be very, very good for our state, and it's one of those things that we just need to see it through to completion.
All right, James in Longview, you be patient. Matt tells me Sarah in Baton Rouge was actually ahead of you, so you're next, James. But Sarah in Baton Rouge, good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Governor. Thank you for taking my call. I'm concerned about the variants spreading across the nation and in the state. The CDC reports 24 cases of the UK variant in Louisiana. Will LDH be releasing data on the spread of the UK variant on the cases on a parish level? Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, we have produced information, and I don't know if it's on our website. I know we've talked about it at our press conferences about exactly where we have confirmed cases of the UK variant, but also where we have suspected cases. And the challenge is genetic sequencing is not available, is not robust in the United States, and so we can't do that for every sample. But in almost every case where we suspect it turns out to be the UK variant. And it's been detected all over the state except in Region 8 up around Monroe. But I can tell you we have every reason to believe, and we feel very confident that it's in the Monroe area too. And on the other hand, it seems to be most prevalent in southwest Louisiana around Lake Charles. And the reason this is important, and the reason why we have to keep wearing our mask and distancing and following mitigation measures is because the UK variant, either late this month, early in April, should be the most prevalent form of the virus in circulation in the United States and in Louisiana. It is more contagious, meaning that it's more easily transmissible by at least 50% over the standard coronavirus. And if you get it, you're more likely to have a worse outcome, either a serious case of the disease, hospitalization, or death. And the good news is the mask works against it, and so does the vaccination. So let's keep wearing the mask and let's get vaccinated as soon as we can.
What is your reaction to your colleagues in Mississippi and Texas removing the mask requirement? We're talking about the governors of those states.
Yeah, and you know, I hope you'll understand, I don't comment directly on what other governors do or don't do. I can't be sure what their public health experts are telling them, what data they may be looking at, or what's informing their decision making. I can only tell you here, it was unanimous among my public health experts, epidemiologists, and so forth at LDH and the Office of Public Health, but also at the CDC, and that is for right now. Kind of as we're running all the way through the base, if you let me get back to that analogy, we need to continue to have reasonable restrictions in place. Obviously, we've lessened those restrictions, but keep the masks on in order to slow the transmission, especially because of the variant. And we do have a few states in the United States now that are starting to increase in cases and hospitalizations again. It appears it's directly related to the variant, and so I think it's premature to do that. And the other part of that, for me, Jim, is if you tell people, okay, we're going to remove the mask mandate, but then you also say, but we strongly encourage you to keep wearing the mask, they don't hear the second part, because in their mind, they're going to say, if wearing the mask is important, you wouldn't have removed the mandate. Mm-hmm. Well, it remains important, and so we're going to do it for a while longer. And look, get vaccinated so you can enjoy those times. I'm looking forward, I'm just going to tell you, to going to see my mother, because she and I are both now fully vaccinated. We can take off our masks. We don't have to distance. I can sit down inside with her and share a meal, give her a kiss on my way out the door. And so we can all achieve some normalcy, but the vaccination is so important. And until we do that, as collectively, we need to keep wearing the mask.
James in Longview, Texas, you are on the air with Governor John Bell Edwards. James.
Well, good afternoon, Jim, and good afternoon, Governor. Anyhow, basically, as a Texan, I'll just chime in. I'm voluntarily wearing my mask, even though I don't have to. I believe better safe than sorry, and it doesn't hurt my ego one little bit. I'd rather be safe, but I'll get right to the topic. Anyhow, I've been noticing in the news, and kind of semi-affected me indirectly, about a topic I'm sure you've heard of, imposters posing as being from the Louisiana Office of Motor Vehicles. And as you know, I'm just across the line in Texas, and I knew when I got the email it was bound to be a scam, but it looked fairly real, and I just more or less wanted to bring that up just to kind of inform listeners that this scam is going around, and I just wondered out of curiosity, have you been making any progress apprehending the culprits, or know who's behind all that?
Well, first of all, James, thank you for the call, and also thank you for wearing a mask. It really isn't an onerous requirement, and in the grand scheme of things, it's a minor imposition if it slows, as we know it does, the transmission of a deadly disease. And for those people who've always downplayed how significant COVID is, understand that in 2020, we had a 30% increase in deaths in Louisiana over 2019. Right now, we're almost at 10,000, and hundreds of thousands who have been confirmed positive, and tens of thousands who've actually been hospitalized. But James, with respect to the OMV, our Office of Motor Vehicles issued a press release on the 15th. This is a problem. People are falling for a fraudulent scheme where third parties are out there, and they actively solicit people online, but they're running fake websites where they pretend to be the Office of Motor Vehicles, and you can, for example, register your car online, and we encourage you to do that for convenience. But go to www.expresslane.org to do that. You can also do it by mail or in person at the OMV office. And please, if something just sounds too good to be true, or doesn't look quite right, don't fall for it. And if you believe that you have been solicited by one of these fraudulent schemes, one of these imposter motor vehicle websites, report that to the state police at www.lsp.org. The last question you asked, I'm not sure whether we've had any success in identifying or apprehending or putting out of business these individuals, but we are working on that as well.
Ezra in New Orleans. Ezra, you're on Ask the Governor.
Hi, Governor Edwards. Thanks for taking the call, doing the show, and happy St. Patty's Day. My question has to do with the infrastructure bill that's being proposed through Congress now. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. And then if it did pass, if there's any specific examples of infrastructure improvements that we might see in the state.
Yeah, well, first of all, Ezra, thank you very much. Very important. It's my understanding that Congress, now that the Rescue Act has passed and been signed into law, they're going to turn their attention to infrastructure. Not exactly sure what the size and scope of that will be, what the non-federal participation, meaning what are we going to have to put up as a match in order to get the funds in Louisiana to build infrastructure. But I can tell you we absolutely have needs like the rest of the country. And we are working through our congressional delegation and directly with the U.S. Department of Transportation. I can tell you to advance projects in Louisiana, both capacity projects and maintenance and preservation projects. funding, I should say, for across the state. We have a tremendous need for a new bridge here in Baton Rouge, south of what we currently call the new bridge. But that new bridge is about as old as I am. But in any event, we have lots of infrastructure needs, and not just on roads and bridges, but we have ports, we have airports. We need to look at rail. If we could establish a rail link between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, but have a strong link between Houston and Florida, that would do wonders for economic development and growth. It would get a lot of people off the interstate system, and so we're looking at it from a multimodal perspective, and we're anxious. We've not been bashful about competing for and, quite frankly, winning discretionary grant dollars for construction projects on our roads and bridges and so forth.
Before we go back to the phones, there are some items to talk with the governor about, and one is the severe weather, which is in the offing for our state, and schools in many places have dismissed for the day. Your thoughts, Governor?
Well, we've gotten information from the National Weather Service, Jim, that between now and midnight tonight, we can expect very severe weather across much of the state, and the chances of wind that could be between 60 and 75 miles per hour in terms of gusts. And the higher end of that is, as I think it points further north in the state. But that's significant wind. Hail could be from 1 inch to 2 inches. And then strong, long-track tornadoes are possible. And so I'm just asking people to follow the National Weather Service, follow your local news provider, whether it's TV or radio, and then keep that cell phone on and close to you, because they do send out warnings over the cell phone if a tornado has been detected in an area. And a lot of times that is what people rely upon to get to a point of safety just before a tornado impacts their home or their place of business. And it would be a really good idea to make sure that you keep it on tonight when you go to bed as well. And then if you get that warning, please make sure you do what it recommends.
Now, a session of the legislature will begin April 12th, so that'll be before we meet again. You announced a few weeks ago that the budget for the coming fiscal year is actually better than many thought it would be, that there is money available. COVID-19 money, if you will. Is that something that was anticipated, or was it a surprise even to you that things are not as draconian as they could have been?
Well, first of all, it's a great question, and the way the year started, we knew that by the end of January we had to present an executive budget proposal, and we got information from the Biden administration shortly after it took office that they were going to extend the public health emergency through the end of this year and simultaneously extend the enhanced FMAP, which means that the Medicaid program requires fewer dollars from the state, and the federal government will spend more money on the program. And that savings, that reduction in expenditures next year is what allowed us to present a budget without cuts that makes significant new investments in education, including another teacher pay raise, but also investments in higher education for faculty raises, but also to pay for mandated cost expenses, but put more money in the funding formula. And then we're going to have more kids on TOPS next year. And we're going to put the same amount of new funding that as we do in TOPS into GO grants, which is need-based aid for higher education. So we're in a pretty good place with the budget, and I look forward to working with the legislature through this term to craft what is a very responsible budget, one that serves our people well, and one that takes into account what I think is most likely going to be an improved forecast in May. I believe the economists who forecast general fund, for example, for the state, may improve their forecast in May, which means that the legislature could have even additional dollars beyond what we put in our executive budget proposal.
Jacob in Baton Rouge, you're on the air with Governor Edwards. Hi, Jacob.
Hello. Hello, Governor. I'll just make it quick and short. Your LDH reported roughly a rough 2% increase, positivity increase today. Toro Hospital in New Orleans reported no COVID. Just the message has been lost. And so, what needs to be achieved so these mandates go away? Because we're over a year into 15 days to slow the spread. It's just when we need hard dates. And
thank you.
Yeah, so I wasn't able to gather all of that, but I understand he's talking about the improving picture in the hospitals and so forth, and he wants to know about restrictions.
Yes.
Well, as I hope everybody knows, the current proclamation, which stays in effect through the month of March, I think all the way through March 31st, we went back to Phase 3. It's more relaxed than the previous Phase 3, so there's less restrictions now than there have been at any point since the pandemic started. And as we loosen restrictions, for example, and bring more people into close proximity to one another, while the virus is still out there and being transmitted, and especially when you have a surge on the variant, the UK variant, the mask becomes more important, not less. So, we will, as we always do, in advance of the end of the month, we'll look at all of the gating criteria that have been given to us by CDC and the White House Coronavirus Task Force under President Trump, but also any new guidance that we're getting from the Biden administration and see where we are. And I'm thankful that we're doing better. But I will tell you that when you do better because of the measures you have in place, that doesn't necessarily argue for getting rid of the measures you have in place, because that's the very reason that you're doing better. It's like if you go on a diet and lose 10 pounds and so you say, I can afford to get off the diet now, guess what's most likely to happen? And so we're going to be looking at this, and I consult with epidemiologists and public health experts. I'm not a fan of restriction and mitigation measures more than anybody else, but at the same time, this is a real public health emergency. It has claimed the lives of 10,000 Louisianans, and so we're going to take it seriously.
Kathleen in Mandeville. Kathleen, you're on the air with Governor Edwards.
Governor Edwards, I am a nurse who's been volunteering at multiple sites to do the COVID vaccinations, and it seems so well coordinated, so well pulled together, very efficient. I keep expecting to see Louisiana in the top 5 states for doses given by doses provided. Is there anything, and the answer to the mandates, I believe, is getting to 70% vaccinated. Is there anything that we're not doing in the state that we should be or would be if we had more volunteers to put shots in arms that could get us more people? It feels like we have a lot of product out there. We got lots of serum. We've got lots of patients. So anything else we could be doing to get more vaccines per day?
Well, first of all, it's a great question. I will tell you that the winter storm knocked us back in terms of our overall utilization. We were somewhere between number 8 and number 12 in the country in utilization of vaccine. It fell when we didn't get a single dose for a week, and then we were delayed the next week and so forth. But we're getting back on top of that now. We're not having an issue at present getting doses administered as soon as we get them. That could change in early April, because we're going to get a big increase in all likelihood, especially of Johnson & Johnson, which means we're going to be doing a lot more mass vaccination events. And so anybody out there who believes they have the right skill set and experience, it want to help. And by the way, you can help by giving shots, or you can just help by helping to move people through the process. You can go to lava.dhh.louisiana.gov. So that's lava.dhh.louisiana.gov. But we are training National Guard soldiers and airmen The Biden administration is relaxing the rules. So, for example, that veterinarians and dentists and other healthcare providers will be eligible to administer vaccines. And this may become an issue in April. It has not been an issue to date. I don't think it'll be an issue in the month of March. But you're looking ahead, and I really do appreciate that.
We're going to slide in Bill in New Orleans before the break. Bill, be brief. You're on with the governor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Governor. I've got a long-term question for you with regard to oil and hydrocarbons in Louisiana. We all know that it's a significant aspect of our economy, has been for a long time. We also know that oil and gas are finite resources that will eventually go away. And we're going to get to a point, ultimately, where it makes more sense to use them as ores rather than as fuels. And I'm wondering if you and your staff have begun to provide any input to long-term plans on how, ultimately, this state, long down the road, will move away from hydrocarbons as a principal source of income.
Well, Bill, first of all, thank you very much. It's a great question. So we are a traditional oil and gas state, and I think there's no doubt there's a transition away from fossil fuels. I think that transition is going to take at least a couple of decades, and during that time period, we can continue to take advantage of the fact that we're an oil and gas state. But General Motors has announced that it won't produce another non-electric vehicle after 2035.
Bill in New Orleans asked about the oil and gas industry and the changes that are coming and in some cases have already come. Our state still depends heavily on this industry for much of its sustenance, but it is an industry that is adjusting. And, Governor, how will that affect the state of Louisiana moving forward? And what are you and your staff doing right now to address this?
Well, as I mentioned before, it's a great question, and it is extremely important for our state. There's going to be, and I don't know precisely how long it's going to take, but let's say it takes a couple of decades or so to transition away largely from fossil fuels. During that period, we need to take advantage of the fact that we are an oil and gas state, that the demand for oil doesn't respond to, it's inelastic, so it doesn't respond to supply. So if we don't produce it here, it will still be bought and brought in from somewhere else. And given the fact that the most carbon-advantaged barrel of oil produced anywhere in the world is produced in the Gulf, I will be making the case to President Biden and his administration. In fact, I've already made it in a number of calls that we should continue to produce in the Gulf. But we can't be more oil and gas than the oil and gas companies. Shell has said that their peak production was in 2019. It's never going to get back there again. All of the oil and gas companies are rebranding as energy companies, and they're spending more and more of their annual expenditures, their portfolio, on renewables. General Motors has announced that it won't produce another non-electric vehicle after 2035. So we know that we have a period of time. We've got to diversify our economy, start looking at, and by the way, we're pursuing projects like this already. This fits into Bill's question. The number 2 economic development project in the country that was announced last year is a project at the Port of Baton Rouge. It will be a diesel refinery, but it will not use fossil fuels. It's going to use corn and soybean to produce diesel. And then also carbon, CO2, will be captured and sequestered, which is another thing that we can do to really promote the economy, diversify the economy, and help the environment and the climate as well. But we're pursuing wind, hydrogen, solar, all of these things. It's not a question of one or the other. We have to do them all. And we have to be diversified and take advantage of this time that we have. If we just stick our head in the sand and say we're not changing, the world is going to pass us by. And it's already happened to a few places around the world, and we can't afford for that to happen in Louisiana.
Governor, since we last visited, the Hush-Blackwell report was issued regarding sexual misconduct allegations at LSU. There were some explosive revelations involving prominent people, some of whom you know, most of whom were on the job before you became governor of Louisiana. But your thoughts about the report's findings and that LSU has taken action against two top administrators.
Yeah, yeah. As I've said the other day publicly, I was very concerned when I read it. It turned my stomach to listen to or to read. In this case, I should say, the report that was commissioned by the current leadership at LSU, and to their credit, I believe, made public. And the report didn't just report on all of the allegations and things that have happened, but it also made a series of recommendations, 17 or 18 recommendations, which the leadership at LSU has already declared that they are going to implement each and every one of those. And it's very troubling because it was obviously an institutional failure of leadership at the highest levels, going back, I think, to 2013. And, very few of those individuals are still at LSU. Only two of the board members remain on the board, and neither of them were among the three who knew anything, for example, about the allegations with respect to Coach Miles. And so I have every confidence in that the board, as currently constituted, is going to do everything they can to fix these problems, including having the right policies in place and having the Title IX structure in place and properly resourced and so forth. But we need every student in the country, not just in Louisiana, but every student in the country and their parents need to know that if they come to a university in Louisiana, whether it's LSU or any other, that they are going to be safe and that their safety and well-being is our highest priority. And this idea that somehow you can protect the institution but at the expense of your students is so misguided, because the institution's very purpose for being there is to educate our students and to provide for their well-being. And so I'm at a total loss to explain the decision-making and what happened. And I am absolutely determined that these issues are going to get fixed, and that this is going to happen across the state. We're not going to just assume that it's only at LSU. We're going to make sure that all of higher education in Louisiana participates.
You only had 4 games as governor with Les Miles as coach, but he hung on for 3 years after these allegations were known to some people in high places. And to give our listeners an example, if they don't already know, the football coach, the current one at LSU, earns about $7 million a year. So you have about 2% of the salary as the football coach at LSU, and in America, in 38 states, the highest paid public official in those 38 states is either a football or basketball coach at a university. Do we have too much emphasis and perhaps too much isolation for people who hold those positions?
Well, obviously, you have a problem anytime a coach holds on to his job until he starts losing, despite the fact that he was engaging in this type of misbehavior, that he had been called on the carpet and told to stop, and he didn't stop, and he continued in his job until he started losing games. That clearly is inappropriate and should never, ever be tolerated. I do want to point out, and I know you know this, Jim, but only a very small portion of the annual salary paid to Coach Orgeron comes from state general fund, and I always knew he made a lot more than I did. I didn't know that I made 2% of his salary, though. But thank you for putting that into perspective for me.
Martha in St. Francisville. Martha, you're on with Governor Edwards.
Hello, Governor. I'm wondering what your administration is doing to be sure that the clean drinking water in the aquifer under Baton Rouge is reserved for the people and not depleted by industry.
Well, thank you very much for the call. What I can tell you is that we have a board or a commission that oversees the aquifer, and I know that it's comprised of various individuals, some who come from industry and some who do not. We take this extremely seriously, and in fact, one of the things that the American Rescue Act funding can be spent on is for infrastructure related to drinking water. And I can tell you there's going to be an effort to see whether here in Baton Rouge some of that funding should be spent on ways that would allow industry to use more water from the river and less water from the aquifer. And if that requires new infrastructure, might that funding be available from that means, from the funding we're going to get from that act, I should say. And we work with various environmental groups and others about this particular situation. And I do know that there's growing concern out there about this aquifer that serves the people in Baton Rouge.
Governor, we're short on time. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get some folks who've been waiting, and we'll strive to do better next month. But you will be opening the legislature, I presume, on the 12th of April. What message will you try to convey to lawmakers?
Well, first of all, that where we are in COVID and what's necessary to really put this in our rearview mirror, that'll be one of the things that we discuss. Secondly, the fact that we have an opportunity to pass a very responsible budget that advances key priorities like new investments in education, principal among them, that it's a fiscal session, and that I'll reaffirm my commitment to tax reform. We already have the fifth lowest tax burden in the country, but we have an unnecessarily complex system that doesn't lend itself to transparency and ease of administration. We can fix that. We can lower rates in exchange for getting rid of deductions and exemptions and credits and so forth. And I think we would benefit from doing that. I would also say that with 2025 coming and the loss of the 0.45 cent sales tax, which is about $500 million in revenue, that the changes that we make this year need to be revenue neutral in light of the fact that this revenue, absent some intervening act, is going to go away in 2025.
Thank you, Governor.
Thanks for listening to Ask the Governor with Governor John Bell Edwards. This program is produced by the Louisiana Radio Network.